Peace, peace, peace. What's good, family? Hey, today I found this very interesting because I like to research, man. I like to do my research, and you know, I understand that when you read the 66 books, I understand that the Israelites was not serving the Creator. I understand that through reading. Some people might not understand it because they just want to keep going with the narrative, and as being a chosen people, and they telling you that you're the chosen people, and if you got that in your mind, nobody can tell you that the Israelites were serving a false god, because then that would make you like saying like you serve a false god, right? But I understand that the Israelites was not serving the Creator. I understand that. I understand the line pens of the scribes. I understand that the Israelites was not serving the Creator of the cosmos, the Creator of all. I understand that. So I just want to get into this, and I just want to present this to the people. You take it how you want to take it, but what's right is what's right. What's true is true. What's false is false. You decide that for yourself. But I understand, like I said, I understand that the Israelites was not serving the Creator in the Bible. And it might be a hard pill to swallow, but sometimes, you know what I'm saying? You gotta take that, man. You gotta take that. So I'm gonna go ahead and get into this. Yahweh, the Kenite God of metallurgy. And they were serving. You know what? I'm just gonna be quiet and just read. Let's get it. The Bible describes Yahweh as glowing, kabod, and Yahweh's heat as melting mountains, imagery connected with volcano gods, the divine patrons of metal workers such as the Kenites, who lived in the Negev region. Indeed, the description of Israel's encounter with Yahweh at Sinai portrays a volcanic eruption with smoke as if from a furnace. Exodus 19:18. See that? See that right there? Scholars long supposed that Yahweh was formerly an ancestral God, the God of the fathers, who provided protection, fertility, and rain to the clan worshiping him, and whose dominion was eventually understood to extend to the whole earth as Israelites' religion developed. This view derives in part from the explicit biblical portrait of Yahweh as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the agro-pastoralist lifestyle of these ancestral figures. This reconstruction, however, overlooks an exceptional aspect of Yahweh early history. There you go. You can see them right there. That's like how Yahweh was up on the mount. That's like how he came to the Israelites. You know what I mean? But let's get it and let's see. Because I understand that the Israelites, or the way that people penned the book, a lot of things came from other people, and it's like the Israelites took that to themselves. But let's get it. A volcanic theophany. In the biblical narrative, Yahweh transformed the Israelites into his own people at the revelation at Sinai, Exodus 19:5-6. This revelation is accompanied by what many biblical scholars and geologists have long identified as the successive phases of a volcanic eruption, Exodus 19:16. There were noises, thunders, and lightnings, and a thick cloud on the mountain, and a very loud shofar blast, so that all the people in the camp trembled. Verse 18. Now Mount Sinai was in smoke, because Yahweh had descended on it in fire. The smoke of it went up like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain trembled greatly. Some commentators have argued that verse 16 describes a thunderstorm, and that either these verses stem from different sources with the different conceptions of the event, or that thunderstorms imagery has been artificially combined with volcanic imagery to stress the miraculous dimension of the event. But these interpretations are unnecessary, since thunder and lightning are components of a volcano eruption. Indeed, even rain and hailstorms are frequently provoked by volcanic eruptions, a phenomenon known as wet volcanism. In Exodus, the elements of fire and smoke are accompanied by tremors, the shaking of the mountain described above. The tremors, exceptionally many earthquakes, are characteristics of volcanic eruptions and provoke the release of hot gases from the fissures. This release produces a loud noise, here in the Sinai theophany called a loud shofar blast. This volcanic dimension of revelations also appeared in the account of the Horeb revelation in Deuteronomy, which specifies that Yahweh spoke from fire and smoke from within the crater of the volcano during the eruptions. Deuteronomy 4:11, and you came near and stood at the foot of the mountain, while the mountain burned with fire to the height of heaven, wrapped in darkness, cloud and fog. Verse 12, then Yahweh spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. You heard the sound of words, but saw no form. There was only a voice. Let's get it. The flowing lava is not mentioned here, but in the Song of Deborah, the entire event is referred to as liquefaction of Mount Sinai by the presence of Yahweh. Judges 5:5. The mountains melted to Yahweh, Sinai, before Yahweh, the God of Israel. In some, the memory of Yahweh revelation at the mountain, whether called Sinai or Horeb, pictures the event as a volcanic eruption. You stay with me now. Y'all stay with me. And just be real with yourself. Just be real with yourself. Get out your emotions and just be real with yourself, because truth gonna present itself, not just a literary feature. Considering that no active volcano is known to exist in Sinai Peninsula, some scholars have suggested seeing these features as serving a literary purpose, presenting the event exceptionality and the overwhelming powers of the deity self-revealing to the Israelites. It is, however, important to note that Yahweh's volcanic dimensions is not limited to retellings of the Sinai theophany. Desperate passages connect Yahweh to volcanic imagery, melting mountains, psalmists call upon Yahweh to come and melt the mountains by his mere presence. Psalms 46:7, 97:5. Psalms 46:7, nations rage, kingdoms topple at the sound of his thunder, and earth dissolves. Man, this is whack. 97:2, dense clouds are around him. Righteousness and justice are the base of his throne. Fire is his vanguard, burning his foes on every side. His lightnings light up the world. The earth is convulsed at the sight. Mountains melt like hot wax at Yahweh's presence. At the presence of the Lord of all the earth. Destructive power. Let's go. Prophets warn the people of imminent mass destruction inherent in Yahweh's volcanic activities. Micah 1:3. For lo, Yahweh is coming forth from his dwelling place. He will come down and stride upon the heights of the earth. The mountains shall melt under him, and the valleys burst open like wax before fire, like water cascading down a slope. Let's go. Nahum 1:3. Nahum 1:5. The mountains quake because of him, and the hills melt. The earth heaves before him, the world and all that dwells therein. Who can stand before his wrath? Who can resist his fury? His anger pours out like fire, and rocks are shattered because of him. As these texts show, volcanism seems to be an exceptional attribute typically associated with Yahweh. The account of the Sinai revelation with its volcanic imagery is meant to show that Yahweh himself, and not simply a divine emissary, was present during the revelation and concluded himself the covenant, transforming the Israelites into his people. A Midianite origin for Yahweh. We going to school today, family. Considering that, like the Sinai, volcanic activity is not attested in Israel either. Some scholars have looked further afield and suggest that Yahweh was formerly worshipped in northwestern Arabia, where a volcanic field is attested as having been active for millennia. Some even argue that Mount Sinai should be identified with one of the volcanoes on the peninsula, to which the Israelites would have gone when they left Egypt. Let's go, baby. Jacob Dunn goes so far as to suggest that Yahweh was formerly an Arabian volcano god. All this connects to what scholars call the Midianite origin hypothesis for the cult of Yahweh in Israel. Y'all, when you're going to get this work today, this hypothesis is based on the biblical hints that place the discovery of Yahweh by Moses and Midian, Exodus 3:1-6, by the mountain of God located close to Jethro's dwelling, to which God tells Moses to bring the Israelites to serve him after they leave Egypt, Exodus 3:12. Moreover, Moses' father-in-law is described as priest of Midian, Exodus 2:16, 18:1, implying that Moses may have learned local religious doctrines from him. Now, let's check out the Kenite deity. Other texts referred to Moses' father-in-law as Kenite, a group of whom settled in the land along with the Israelites, are allied to them. Because you know them Kenites, they was chilling with the Israelites, right? Let's go. Indeed, Cain, the eponymous ancestor of the Kenites, becomes a part of the biblical primordial history, and Yahweh's participation in his birth, Genesis 4:1, attests to the closeness of this tribe congregation to him, at least before the rise of Israel. The mention of Cain as the first man to make an offering to Yahweh, Genesis 4:3, strengthens this premise. The connection of Yahweh with the Midianites may justify the exploitation of the volcanic imagery by the Israelites for accounting for the divine presence. But the connection of Yahweh specifically to the Kenites challenges the assumptions of an Arabian origin of Yahweh and points us in a different direction given the Kenites' metallurgical activity. Hey, this is good, man. Hey, this is good. A god of metallurgy. The Kenites appear to have been a society of metal workers. The story of Cain in Genesis 4 describes how one of his descendants, Tubal-Cain, forged all implements of copper and iron. He is described as a smith, the craftsman of producing implements from raw metal. Indeed, the Semitic cognates, Arabic, Syriac, and Aramaic suggest that the root designated activities belonging to the field of metallurgy, smelting, metal production from ore, and smithing, the working of raw metal. Cain himself then rather than his descendant Tubal-Cain should be understood as once having played the role of the forefather of metallurgy, and the South Levantan society of metal workers, Kenites, both smiths and smelters, producers of raw metal for ore. This helps explains their connection to Yahweh, a deity with volcanic attributes. In antiquity, volcanoes were typically identified with the gods sponsoring metallurgy. Come on, y'all. You can't make this stuff up, man. For example, Hephaestus, whatever that is, was called the Prince of Etna in ancient Greece. And the term volcano derives from Vulcan, the name of the divine patron of the metallurgists at Rome. Come on now. Come on now. The association between volcanoes and smelting is easy to understand. Both volcanoes and furnaces release a similar sulfurous smell and smoke. In antiquity, smelting metal productions from ore was the only human activity involving stone melting. Just as lava flows out of a volcano, slag flows out of an active furnace, and slag once solidified resembles volcano stones, basalt. This homology is visible in the description of the Sinai revelation, where the column of smoke rising from Sinai is likened with smoke of a furnace. Copper mining. The consistent use of volcano imagery in portraying Yahweh's appearance denotes a substantial metallurgical background attached to his former identity. Notably, the Song of Deborah connects Yahweh with origins in the land of Seir, located near the Araba copper mining area. Judges 5:4. O Yahweh, when you came forth from Seir, advanced from the country of Edom, the earth trembled, the heavens dripped, the clouds dripped water, the mountains quaked or flowed before Yahweh, the one of Sinai, before Yahweh, God of Israel. The book of Zechariah confirms this point. It begins with a virulent criticism of the ancient prophets of Israel, for they have left the ways of Yahweh and refused to listen to his voice. Zechariah 1:4-6. The meaning of this claim is clarified thereafter when the prophets account of the future coming of 4 saviors of Israel sent by Yahweh and identified as smiths. Zechariah 2:3-4. In a later version, Zechariah 6:1-5, Zechariah sees 4 flying chariots, the 4 winds, coming from mountains of copper, a description designating the copper mining areas, Araba and Sinai, as being Yahweh's former dwelling place. Thus, even as later as Zechariah, Yahweh's metallurgical background was remembered, at least by some. Once we understand that Yahweh was formally identified as a god sponsoring metallurgy in the southern Levant, many other elements of his biblical persona fall into place. Now, the divine furnace in Jerusalem and the heavens. Isaiah refers to Yahweh's furnace in Jerusalem. Isaiah 31:9. Oracle of Yahweh, whose fire is in Zion, and his furnace in Jerusalem. While this deception is typically dismissed as a poetic formulation devoid of theological implications, given the other metallurgical aspects of Yahweh attributes, it likely discloses a metallurgical dimension of Yahweh's cult in Jerusalem. In this understanding, the many metallic items in Jerusalem temple are not a mere expression of magnificence. Rather, their setting, mainly exposed in Exodus through the description of the tabernacle and the specifications about the metals making them, betray the theological significance of their presence. They represent the celestial furnace in the Israelite shrine, transforming it to the terrestrial residence of the God of Israel. Fascinating, ain't it? Even the copper-coated altar in its courtyard granted the burnt offerings and sacrifices a metallurgical significance. The radiance emanating from this metal coating, once it reaches the temperature close to 1,000 C required for the combustion of the burnt offering sacrifices, recalls thermal radiance emitted by molten copper or gold. Hey, man, I'm trying to tell you, boy, Ezekiel's vision, the prophet Ezekiel's inaugural vision describes his access to the celestial universe as follows. Ezekiel 1:4. And I looked, and behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, a great cloud with a fire flashing up and brightness around it. And in this midst, something like hasmo out of the midst of the fire. This vision depicts hasmo, something emitting an intense light in the midst of the heavenly fire. The enigmatic terms occurs in the Bible only in Ezekiel's vision, but we find a similar word in Egyptian hasman and Akkadian hasmala, both of which designate either amber or a metallic alloy of pale yellow or orange color. Indeed, the Septuagint renders the term, which can be translated either as amber or as electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver. Most translations identify hasmo as amber, but this does not work well in context. The mention of burning coals and this fire, Ezekiel 1:13, suggests that hasmo here describes something emitting intense light through thermal radiance. Amber is a fossil resin which produces smoke without emitting any light once set on fire. Thus, in Ezekiel 1, hasmo must be describing a molten metal. Ezekiel further mentions being flapping their wings by fire. Ezekiel 1:24. When they move, I could hear the sound of their wings like the sound of mighty waters, like the sound of Shaddai, a tumult, like the din of an army. Through the description of these creatures and their motion, Ezekiel here accounts apparently from the intense airflow feeding the celestial furnace and boosting the production of glowing coals. In other words, this vision depicts Yahweh's heavenly universe as a giant furnace, and winged creatures surrounding it and producing the air flow like bellows. When we combine Ezekiel's vision with Isaiah's metaphor, we understand that these prophetic visions represent Yahweh's presence both in heaven and on earth by the means of a kind of giant furnace, a feature rooting his cult in metallurgy. Kabod, like its usage in human context, kabod in divine context is generally understood as referring to Yahweh's glory. However, translating the expression El HaKabod as God of glory, Psalms 29:3, and Melchah Hakabod as King of glory, Psalms 24:7, 8, 8 and 10 implies that one of Yahweh's most exceptional characteristics is a subjective trait dependent on those praising him. Instead, the mention of the Israelites seeing the kabod of Yahweh, Exodus 16:7, Numbers 14:21 through 22, suggests that it refers to a physical reality which the Israelites may perceive. This physical nature of kabod, Yahweh, as something that can be seen is confirmed by its revelation during volcanic eruptions. The Psalms 97:5, the mountains melted like wax before Yahweh, before the Lord of the whole earth. The heavens declare his righteousness, and all the people saw his kabod. Here, kabod, Yahweh, becomes visible to everyone once mountains melt like wax, that is, through the flowing of lava. This details, combined with the intense heat, all burning properties, and light associated with kabod, Yahweh, suggests that it envisions the yellow-orange thermal radiance emitted by physical bodies heated up to 1,000 Celsius equals 1,832 degrees Fahrenheit, such as molten lava, slag, gold, or copper. Solar imagery. In some passages, Yahweh kabod is identified with the solar radiance. Psalms 84:12. For Yahweh God is sun and shield. Yahweh bestows grace and kabod. He does not withhold his bounty from those who live without blame. Isaiah 59:19. From the west, they shall revere the name of Yahweh, and from the east, where the sun rises, his kabod. For he shall come like a hemming and stream which the wind of Yahweh drives on. This depiction fits a representation of a shining sun as a bulk of molten metal, radiating both light and heat unto the earth during the day. And in this case, the celestial furnace, the holy site of Yahweh's activity, has a precise function and conditions the sun activity and its beneficial role for the earth. Ezekiel's connection of Yahweh's kabod with the Hasmon strengthens this understanding. Now let's go. Ezekiel's 1 through 27. From what appeared as his loins up, I saw a gleam as a Hasmon, what looked like a fire encased in a frame. And from what appeared as his loins down, I saw what looked like fire. There was a radiance all about him, like the appearance of a bow which shines in the clouds on a day of rain. Such was the appearance of the surrounding radiance. That was the appearance of the semblance of the kabod of Yahweh. The Hasmon here is compared to the radiance of a rainbow or the sun behind clouds, and Ezekiel calls this phenomenon Yahweh's kabod, confirming that this term describes something physical and closely relative to thermal radiance. Come on now. Hey, this real easy, man. You know, this real easy. I'm going to look at, so I'll probably skip through a little bit, but this is real easy. But I'm going to go ahead and read this real quick. Beyond its primary meaning as noise, AP also designates wrath and anger in the Bible. The Bible makes extensive use of this term about 180 times in the divine context, thus seeming to present the God of Israel as an explosive, fulminating, and even infiltrated character. And yet the figurative meaning of the term cannot always support a translation of wrath or anger, even in the context of divine snorting, roaring, or smoking. In Job, for instance, we see Yahweh, AP, destroying mountains when the deity is alone, without humans around to raise anger. Job 9:5. He who removes the mountains, and they know it not, when he overturns them by his AP. In this verse, AP cannot signify anger. No traces of divine anger appear in the surrounding verses. Moreover, the verse appears in the speech of Job, who is refuting the assumptions argued by his friends of a casual link between human sins and divine punishment. Rather, the verse conveys the observation that divine changes in topography occurred far from human eyes, so that no one is aware of their occurrence and consequences. Now I'm gonna go down real quick, right? But as you can see, it's wild because the God Yahweh, everything goes back to a volcano. And you can see that the Kenites, they served a volcano god, which, you know what I'm saying, which is crazy, man. Let me see. I'm gonna go on, skip through this part too. Maybe I read this. Yahweh the blower. Yahweh's metallurgical history may also be found in his name. When Moses encounters Yahweh for the first time, he asks Yahweh his name, and is supplied by two answers. The first explains that the deity's name is I am. Exodus 3:14, and God said to Moses, I am what I am. And he said, thus shall you say to the Israelites, Yah, I am, sent me to you. This answer has the deity's name as deriving from the Hebrew root, meaning to be. Understanding Israel deity as the supreme being, this is akin to the deity's other name, Ha, Elohim, the supreme God, mentioned just before Exodus 3:13, as this name is not used elsewhere. It appears to be a later attempt to interpret the more enigmatic name Yahweh introduced in this verse. And God said further to Moses, thus shall you speak to the Israelites. Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This shall be my name forever. This my appellations for all eternity. Unlike Yah, the name Yahweh is not derivable from the root meaning to be, but rather, as several scholars have suggested, it appears to be from the root to blow, expressing both the action of blowing and or the wind resulting from it. Yahweh's name, therefore, designates this deity as the blower. Those who translate the name this way generally interpret the appellation in the context of thunderstorm imagery, assuming that the God of Israel began as a storm god. Oh my goodness, boy. The blowing of wind, however, is not exceptional or even a dominant feature in the storms like thunder or lightning. In contrast, the blowing of air is the critical element of metallurgy. Blowing is necessary for boosting combustion from 700 to 800 Celsius normal fire to the temperature required for the fusion to copper, 1000 to 1100 Celsius, and it's smelting up to 1200 Celsius necessary for the fusion of silicates. This, I will argue, is why designating Yahweh as the blower is best understood as deriving from a metallurgical background. Yahweh began not as the God of storms, but as the God of smelting. Now I'm gonna go on through this. You could go back to the video and read what I went through, because I just wanted to just show you, as scholars that talk about this, and once you start to read and do your research, you'll know that the Israelites was not serving the Creator. You know what I'm saying? But and another thing, when you see Lord God and God in the Hebrew, when you look in the concordance in the Bible, it takes you to angel. angels and man, you know what I'm saying, and deities. You know, they try to hide stuff, but they couldn't hide it. So look, you know what? I'm just gonna go up and read this because this it. So I'm gonna go ahead. Yahweh moved from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age. The hypothesis of the metallurgical background of ancient Yahwism seems intuitive at first sight, since it contrasts sharply with the Israel agripastoral lifestyle. Moreover, the figure of Yahweh in the Bible is not reminiscent of the secondary status of smith gods in many ancient mythologies. However, if Yahweh's origins are rooted in the copper mining areas, Sinai, Arabah, the god should be likened with smelting, not smith gods, whose outstanding position emanates from the symbolism attached to its activity. In antiquity, the production of copper was approached as an act of creation of matter, the metal, from a sandstone, the ore, where it is apparently absent. This feature promoted the smelting god to the status of ultimate master of the powers of creation. The ability to recycle the copper of old rust artifacts in a furnace without any loss of matter added the attribute of rejuvenation. Through this power, the smelting god became the ultimate master of the powers of the vitalization and holiness. Let me read that again. Through this power, the smelting god became the ultimate master of the powers of the vitalization and holiness. This perspective accounts for the outstanding religious importance of the metallurgy in the past. As Mircea Eliade wrote, the discovery of metals and the process of metallurgy radically modified the human mode of being in a universe. Not only did the manipulation of metals contribute considerably to man's conquest of the material world, it also changed his world of meaning. The metals opened for him a new mythological and religious universe. The rise of iron in the first millennium BCE downgraded the holiness, visualizing and creation dimensions attached to the metallurgy. Forgive me, pardon me for that. Unlike copper, iron is a metal already visible in the ore, a feature liking its smelting with an act of mutilation, purification, rather than creation of matter. Furthermore, the inability to melt iron in antiquity prevented the recycling, rejuvenation of this metal. Metallurgy became a craft among others, and it deprived the smelting god of one of his most essential attributes, his being the source of creation, vitalization, and holiness. The move to iron also deprived this deity of his status of mysterious super god, transcending both the domain of gods and of humankind. Before this immutant position made his access especially difficult, mainly accessible through historic knowledge and the metallurgical experience. His worship was radically different from that of the classical deities, mainly conditioned by calls addressed to a divine being for his or her intervening of the worshiper behalf. This difference may explain why the smelting god was never a god of the masses, and why his existence is mostly ignored today in histories of religions. This may also explain why the historical record is almost entirely silent about the existence of Yahweh until the emergence of Israel. Adopting an historic smelting god as patron deity. Israel's adoption of this Midianite, Kenite smelting god as their patron deity was an unprecedented move from its very beginning. Israelites' Yahweh worship was based on the transformation of an esoteric belief system reserved from metal workers and their followers into a public doctrine addressed to a whole people. The metamorphosis helped spawn the outstanding creativity characterizing the religion of ancient Israel and the way Yahweh is presented in the Bible. So I just wanted to present y'all with this, how the Israelites took another people gods and made it their God and made him to be the God of mankind. So this is something that I just want to present, you know what I'm saying? I just want to read this, you know what I'm saying? So, hey, it is what it is. And truth is truth, man. And, you know, a lot of scholars been talking about this, you know what I'm saying? So it's not like this just me just coming out here with this, you know what I'm saying? So you study to show thyself approved. Continue to do your research. Don't have your family, especially as a man, don't have your wife worshiping a false deity, a deity of metallurgy at that. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got to tighten up, and we have to understand that, you know, these books are not perfect that we read. Now book is perfect that we read. Now book is perfect. You know what I'm saying? No book that we read is perfect. I don't believe no book 100% because man has written it, and, you know, scribed what he wanted to scribe in it. You know, now all this time they got us serving and worshiping, you know, false gods, other gods, not the creator. So I just want to put this out there, you know what I'm saying? So do what you want with the information, but continue to do your research, man. And I know that what I just read is gonna make people, like, especially the Israelites, you really gonna kick against that. You're not even gonna do your research to see if what I'm saying is right, like the Bereans did. Your spirit is fighting right now, but just know the creator is not going to chop your head off if you do research and research the Bible, research what you believe in. You know what I'm saying? Put your Bible to the test. Test the spirit by the spirit. And I understand, and a lot of my other people understand, and my wife understand, that the spirit of that God in the Bible is not the creator. Continue to research, continue to do what you do. And I'm going to end that like that. Shalom.